Afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this refresher support session for those of you teaching A-level drama and theatre. I'm Paul Webster. I'm the subject advisor for Pearson's Drama and Performing Arts qualifications. Lots of lovely people have joined us today, recognising lots of your names. We've had many chats before, so hopefully this session will provide you with all the guidance that you need. At this point, please feel free to say hello in the chat, and if you want to say whereabouts you are in the UK or in the world, that would be lovely as well. I'm currently in Walthamstow, which is northeast London. It's not as hot as it was, but it's very pleasant, and I hope it is wherever you are too. Today we are going to do an overview of the qual. We're going to look at the structure and the three components that we have. We're going to look at some resources that are available and the type of support that I can offer you. And you're very welcome to ask questions at any time. So as Nash said, if you want to put the questions into the chat, that's absolutely fine. And there will be some points where I'll invite you if you want to come off mic as well. That'd be great to hear from you, and lovely to hear your locations where you are right now from all over the show, mainly in the UK. Oh, Bethan, you're just down the road, you and Josh, in sunny Stratford. I will do my best, Rianne, to give you as much support and reassurance as I can. Hello, Charlene in Dubai. Oh, nice. I imagine it's quite warm there. And hello to us all. It looks like most of us are based in the south of the UK. Jolene in Belfast and Rianne in the northern quarters of the UK. So welcome to you all. So the qualification has been available since 2016. The first certification was in 2018. For the first couple of years of the course, we did have an AS, but we no longer offer that. We've just got the A level. And this qualification is available across the world. So we don't have a separate international version. It's the same one as Charlie will know in Dubai. There are two external assessments in components 2 and 3. Component 1 is marked by you, and students have got until May of the final year to complete it. We've got lots of online live and recorded training available. There will be some more that will be happening from September. I'll go into that in a bit more detail later, but we will have some further support that we've not had before around component 3. So hopefully that will be useful. And we've got lots of published resources, lots of free stuff with it, with the occasional thing that you can buy. In terms of the structure of the qual, I'm sure that you're all aware of this because I think nearly all of you or all of you here today have been teaching this course before. If you are brand new, then please feel free to say, because I don't want to miss anything. I am also running an event on Thursday, which is those who are brand new to the course. So if you are new, then you might want to pop along to that one as well. But in terms of the structure, component 1 is 40% of the qualification, has got 80 marks. Component 2, text in performance, is 20% and 60 marks. And component 3, the written exam, is 40% of the qual and worth 80 marks. Okay, Keris, thank you for that. So one new person. So I hope that everything that I'm going to share with you now is understood, but feel free to ask any questions that you might have. In terms of the structure over the 2 years, most people will approach it in this way. It'd be interesting if you do have any other approaches, and if you want to share them about how you run the course. But in term 1 of year 12, in like an induction period, that students given a range of opportunities, lots of practical sessions to develop their knowledge, understanding of skills for the course. And this is an ongoing process, and they can be introduced to at least one of the set texts to practically explore And then students exploring the text as theatre makers, thinking about from a design perspective and from a performer's perspective, and hopefully getting the opportunity to see some live theatre. And then into the spring term with an exploration of an extract from the performance text and some work on practitioners' theories and methodologies that's going to lead into the development of devising skills that they would look at in term three. So in most cases, students will create their work in the final term of year 12. These will be performed and these are evaluated by you. Sorry, that they're assessed by you, and it may be that in that final term as well that they look at the other set text that you're going to do, or it may be that you start to do work on component two. They can have a look at scripts over the summer holidays, because that's all going to be kicking off when they get back in year 13. That autumn term of year 13, it could be that they're working on component three and the work as a director and the concept of how to make this applicable and suitable for a contemporary audience. Going to be looking at some live theatre again, and it might be that they're looking at recorded or streamed work as well as being able to go and see stuff in the flesh. And then into the spring term, they're going to be doing their component two performances, and doing then some further preparation for component three. And then within that final term, they've got the deadline for the devise work and they've got the exam around the first week of June. It's actually come forward a little bit in 2026, and I will tell you about that in a short while. On the screen, you will see that in the top right-hand corner, it says course planner in a pink area. As part of the packs that were sent to you, these slides are in there. And if you click on any of these, if you open up the slides and you click on them, it will take you directly to the page on the website or the document itself that I'm referring to. So if you want to follow along, if you want to be able to access these materials, if you've not seen them before, then please feel free to do so. Sherry, hello, Sherry, you've asked a question. Are students allowed to write about digital theatre? Well, within the context of component one, that they can do. Within the context of component three, students should be referring to live theatre they've experienced, i.e., work where they're in the same room as the performance taking place. If there is a reason why that's not going to be happening for students, for whatever reason it is, then you just need to let us know. And because it may be about a geographical position of where you are, it may be that there are other things to take into consideration about your particular cohort. Whatever it is, please do get in touch with us, and we should be able to give you permission to use streamed or recorded work. Now, in terms of component one, it's you might not begin the course by my pleasure. You might not begin the course by teaching it, but it's most likely to be completed in year 12. There are some centres who will, of course, do it at the start of year 13, but I suppose that just depends on the context of where they're at and if that works well for their students. So students will be working in groups of 3 to 6. The devise performance work is going to last between 15 and 30 minutes. And the stimuli is going to be an extract from a play text of your choosing. You can basically choose anything that isn't one of the set texts. And when it is performed in full, it's at least 60 minutes long, which is the majority of plays. So the extract that the student should be looking at is at least 10 minutes long. And when you have a look in the specification, you'll see that all the different things that they could refer to, whether it's the theme, whether it's the structure, the language, the characters, there's a lot that students can use as a jumping off point for the devised work. The students are also going to apply the methods and the methodologies of a particular theatre practitioner, and they should have experienced live theatre by the time they come to create their own devised work. So they're going to be referencing that in their practical work and also in their portfolios about how they've been influenced by the live experiences that they've had. The performance itself is worth 25% of the component marks. It's assessed by the teacher, and the portfolio is 75% of um, of the marks for this component. Looking back at last year, some ideas around popular works that were used. So some really strong plays there. And the most popular practitioners being um, all men, which is a bit of a shame, but that's the way that it is. But there were also some engaging choices made. Katie Mitchell, Punch Drunk, Aleki Blythe, some really great, interesting practitioners and theatre makers there, and some fascinating themes and ideas included work around sexuality, displacement, the impact of social media, whether that's positive or negative, political corruption, and still kind of echoes of the pandemic and what had happened not so long ago. But if you do want to have a look for further inspiration and guidance and feedback on approaches to component one that have worked, then the Principal Moderator Report is a good place to start. So the link in the top right of the screen. Here's some examples of practitioners. These are taken from a list that we have, a document list on our website that you may be aware of, you may not, but these are the ones that are listed in there that you can just go ahead and run with. If the practitioner you want to choose isn't on that list, then please do let us know. You can email us at drama.assessment@pearson.com and the name of the practitioner that you're interested in doing. Now, here are some considerations for component one that you might find useful. That encouraging creativity and experimentation is absolutely to be recommended, and students can be really inventive in their devised work and can push the boat out with experimental, immersive, kind of, anti-proscenium arch style work. Absolutely fine, and it is really the only time on the course in an assessment context anyway when they can do that in terms of how they stage it and what things will look like. I mean, they can do it to some extent in component two, but it is a bit more trad in terms of communicating to the audience in that way. So I suppose when doing this, when pushing the boundaries, and especially if they've seen some really interesting work, that any pre-show activity will count in the time limit for their performance. So that's a really good thing to know. So there may be some beautiful interactive performance work, but you just need to make sure that when is the recording going to begin for the moderation process. And it may begin from a certain point, which is after they've done some audience mingling, some particular work. So just be wary of that. Um, if a student wants to direct, they can do, but there's no mark for directing for the practical work. So that's worth taking into consideration as well. So as part of that process, that potentially they're all taking it in turns to contribute in terms of direction and that audience experience that they want to promote and encourage. If students are making a physical theatre led piece, then encouraging students to include movement material that is connected to the ideas in the performance. And that if it's too heavily physical and movement based and there's not enough focal work, then students might not be able to access the full range of marks. So it's just something to consider there. If students choose to split the performance into different venues using multiple performance spaces, then it's going to cause issues around the recording. And because the camera can only capture one specific moment. So it's about finding a balance between the need to engage the live audience and satisfy the requirements of the assessment. I'm thinking specifically about punch drunk here and how students who experience punch drunk work just find it incredibly inspiring. But not all punch drunk works in the same way, and some of it I've seen some work by them where it's a much kind of stronger narrative, like it felt like a kiss, and maybe think of it more of a promenade than this dual multi kind of performance space happening simultaneously. So the recording is basically it's the essential piece of evidence. So you need to ensure that the quality of the recording is as high as possible. Some questions here, Sherry. Can a student be assessed in design for both practical components, or does one have to be acting? Absolutely fine. A student could do design in component one, both sections of component two. They don't need to perform at all on the course if they don't want to. Bethan, about students wanting to do in the round staging and the best position for the camera, and whether or not it's preferable to keep it end on for the sake of assessment. It is possible to do something that's in the round and record it, and be able to capture as much as possible from it, because it really depends what the students are doing when they're, because if they're doing the performance and it's in the round, and they are going to have to move. They can't just be facing in one direction. And it may be actually that they're strong enough in their performances that catching them from the side, catching them from the back, the mics are good and they can pick everything up. That the students can still do really well and access all the marks. So I would experiment before getting anywhere near um, doing the actual devising itself. So maybe in year 12, it's about trying things out in terms one and terms two, where they're using scripted work and trying out different stage configurations to see how they get on and whether or not they're strong enough for the camera to pick them up and pick up all the subtleties of some acting. And in some instances, it's a case of, well, we might just reduce it so it's more of a thrust, or rather than it being completely in the round. So the students are facing, they're turning from left to right and stuff, but they're not like having to do the whole 360. So I would try some things out. And yeah, for the promenade, I would say it's possible to do. Like, say you've had 4 or 5 stages dotted around the space, or moving from room to room, that as the audience move, and the audience moving kind of as one, that the camera is moving, you make yourself a little dolly, you put the camera tripod on a an office wheelie chair, and that you're moving around so it's as smooth as possible. You can see, and then when it comes to, they then go to stage one, and then you can film it, and it's stationary. It's avoid really the camera constantly moving, especially if you don't have a wheeled device to do it. Yeah, the portfolios. I'm sure you're all aware of the word limits, and the if any student is brave enough, or wants to try the recorded verbal evidence, that's between 12 to 4 minutes, or they can do a combination of the two. In terms of the portfolio, we've got some guidance on our website, and you may have not seen this, but it's called The Guide to Creating Portfolios. And it really just goes into a bit more detail about things that you might want to consider when preparing your students and supporting your students with with doing the statements, responding to the statements. So, for example, with the first statement, things to consider are around because words are of a premium, as you know, like try to avoid the description of the plot or the narrative, and it's about really encouraging your students not to waste words. And in this first statement, it talks about tracking, and the word track is important as it implies there's a sense of the journey, and that students might want to document their progress, their achievements, their ideas through the key stages of the rehearsal process. So, keeping a working log could be really useful. And the response should consider significant moments in the process, not just their introduction to the extract or to the practitioner. It's how the response to the extract and the practitioner has developed over time. The second statement, it might be around having a writing frame and a speaking frame to approach this area of the portfolio. So give a clear example and then the evidence of research. Detail how that research was used in the rehearsal. Explain how the research had an impact on the development process and the outcomes. For the third statement about the evaluation, it's that they can evaluate the development in both positive and negative forms, as long as they've got an example that they're going into, then that's absolutely fine. And it may be that one way student might want to approach this area is through to evaluate their role in like a chronological format from start to finish. Sherry, in terms of this guide, well, this is written for teachers, so it may be that you want to translate this into a format that will work best for them. Is my suggestion about sharing this guide. But this is really useful information for them because it's just gonna hey, really don't worry about asking the questions. Honestly, it's this is the purpose of why we're here today. This fourth statement is about the need to analyze the practitioner, and examples here of how the methodology of the practitioner have influenced the student are key. A detailed analysis is encouraged. And in terms of the live theatre here, it might be that they're focusing on a particular production that they've seen, or a theatrical approach, or a convention or a design idea or an acting style. There's lots of ways that they can do this because they can talk about a number of live theatre experiences they've had and how they all work. Or it could be like how the audience is treated, for example, with kind of reverence and people are being really quiet. Or it could be that they're going in with a particular production that they want to talk about. The fifth statement is about the student being able to talk about contexts and practical examples that help and to discuss how the context has been explored and interpreted. So really good to get some examples there. And then the sixth statement is about the choices that they've made. And it's the opportunity to outline the aims of the final piece and then measure the success of their intentions. So lots of students do audience feedback, and this can really help. I mean, there are things that students can pick up on if when they're doing the performance, then they watch the video back, a recording back, and it's like, oh yeah, we really thought that would land differently to how it has done. We thought that the audience would respond in a particular way, etc., etc. So, but sometimes audiences can be very silent when they're affected, and so a written feedback or even a Q&A after might be a way to capture this. Rianne has asked about using Stanislavski and then a bit of Katie Mitchell live cinema. Even though Stan was the practitioner, can we mention both? Well, that's it. So the thing about this, Rianne, is that the students can be referring to Stan as the practitioner, And then Katie Mitchell as the example of the impact of live theatre and what they've experienced. Obviously, in terms of the diagram of naturalism, Katie Mitchell really crosses over significantly as well. So it's important for the students to be able to really clarify that within their portfolios, that that's what they're referring to, that they're not talking about two practitioners that have influenced their work in that respect, but they're talking about Katie Mitchell more about the live theatre experience. Hope that makes sense. That I've realised that that might have been slightly bewildering, but they should only focus on one main practitioner for their portfolios. A good thing to talk about with your students is that the practical work is a group activity, whereas the portfolio is a personal reflection, and that some students really focus on the group and the we in their portfolios and not enough I. So they need to, yeah, decisions were made as a group or individuals put things forward. That's absolutely fine. And they can refer to that in their portfolio. But they also then do really need to focus on this is about them and what they've done and what how they've evaluated what they did. So a tip, as I said before, is that the students keep a working diary. Now we've got lots of examples of component one exemplar work on the website. It's in the coursework support, in the exemplar material, and in the past training content sections of teaching and learning materials. Okay, any just some further considerations here, and feel free to put things into the chat about how you approach component one. Do you change the stimuli each year? Do you change the practitioners? Do you change the play, or do you have the same reliable go-to ones? How do you support students with keeping the notes? Is it the kind of thing that you ask them to do at the end of each session? Do they complete a weekly log? So thoughts on that. What strategies do you have for conflict and engagement? So how are groups formed? How do they manage? And then do you have like kind of go-to strategies really for sorting them out? Maybe trying to nip things in the bud. And finally, how do you support them with direction feedback? Because this isn't, you're not directing in this when they're creating the work, you're facilitating. So, thinking about how you sufficiently prepare them before the assessment begins is, it's really important to do. How you can give feedback without directing, and maybe the thought of how you create exercises and approaches that foster innovation. So I always think of, the paper birds and their approach to devising, where they've got these kind of actioning cards and they just kind of come up with like just really good starter activities. Um, okay, Rianne, you said you explore practitioners, loads of them, and then they decided on one, um, and then picking a text to go with it. Absolutely fine to do that. I mean, you're then with doing that, you're providing a kind of foundation, aren't you? Of look, there's all these different types of work. They may have already learnt about some in GCSE if they've done that, but giving them a range, whether that's through workshops and things of different approaches, and then they choose is I think that's a great way to do it. I don't know whether anybody else is doing that. Um, Natalie, using a current practitioner was more inspiring, so you can go and see their work. Complicity, wonderful. And they're all going to watch them in November by themselves. That's lovely. That's great, isn't it? I mean, that's what you want, isn't it? That you share these ideas with them and then the students go and sort it out themselves. And yeah, lovely. I mean, and especially with Complicity, like they've really branched out in recent years in terms of the type of work that they've done. So yeah, they've got like the revival of mnemonic and things like that, but then they've also working with new theatre makers with and not so reliant on the kind of their traditions and the kind of clowning traditions, really. And it's a fascinating kind of development of them. And Daniel, same as Rianne. Yeah, great. It sounds like that could work then, that foundational approach. So just a few questions here. You can't direct them. Can you use punch drunk? We talked a little bit about that before, so they can do, but kind of within reason. In terms of the portfolio, what's included in the word count? So illustrations, annotations of text, mind maps are not included. Uh, and the statements obviously aren't included. There's no leeway on the word max, so moderation will stop at 3,000 words. Um, a bibliography isn't needed. Footnotes are allowed, but the bibliography and footnotes are generally not moderated. Only the words of the student count towards the in the body of the portfolio count towards the word count. And yes, you can annotate by all means. It can be really helpful, whether that's putting the levels in or and commentary. It's up to you. Um, and anything that will help clarify what it is that they've done, either for yourself and for the moderator, is going to be really useful. Sherry, the students can work on developing the notes and ideas for the portfolio. I mean, wherever possible, that they should be completing like the final write-ups in some supervised, controlled assessment conditions, purely because of where we're at with AI and things like that. So it's important that the validity of the work is can be authenticated by you. Yeah, yeah, it's a tricky one. But of course, there's a lot that they can do outside of it. So I had a question today from a teacher, which was about can they rehearse outside of lessons? And it's like, yeah, like in terms of practice and stuff, yes. In terms of development, that's a slightly different thing. So if they've created something, they just want to like polish it and get it right, then absolutely. But it's the development of stuff that needs to be considered. Um, a couple more questions. This kind of covers for component two, which we're about to move on to. At the moment, they have to work in groups for components one and two. Obviously, in component two, they can do a monologue, duologue for that first section. We are very likely to be introducing the opportunity for students to do a duologue in component one, and I will nothing confirmed yet, but hot off the press, it's very likely to be happening. So, and we'll introduce that next year. So that can help, I think, for quite a lot of people who are running A level because the cohorts just tend to be so much smaller now. Groups tend to be so much smaller. If you have to use non-assessed individuals at the moment, can the work be shorter? Well, it's no, the work still needs to meet the requirements. How it would work though with the one or two students being assessed is that they can take bigger roles. But if you are in that situation, then please do let me know. Can give you some help. That's component one. Spent a long time on that. Let's move on to component two. Sure you all know all of this. The assessment takes place in a big window from January until April of year 13. Students have a lot of autonomy in terms of the choices that they can use. They can't use the or any of the set text, but they can basically choose anything else as long as it's 60 minutes long. And it contrasts in some way with the set text, but I mean, this is to do with it could be context, it could be different playwrights, but there's still the opportunity to have some overlaps there. These are popular choices from last year, some big hitters that I'm sure you'll recognise, and some really great works there. Um, and they don't need to be influenced by any particular practitioner when they're doing these. And monologues and duologues can be edited to provide the right amount of material and produce a coherent performance. Some popular choices there for group work, and if you want to look at any more, the lead examiner report is the link is in the top right hand corner. In terms of component two, again, it'd be nice to hear any ideas that you have, and you can put them into the chat. But if anybody does want to speak, then you just need to raise your hand, and I'll invite you to come off mic. But the first question is around the type of text that you use, and do these are these again kind of ones that you will always rely upon and think, oh yeah, we're always going to choose that because it's really great. You feel comfortable with it, and you can always kind of persuade students to use it, or do you adjust it according to the new cohort and what they're like and recently, I love reading plays, and I try and go and see as many as possible. But I also thought, "Do you know what? I need to buy some plays." So I bought some, and they're really wonderful. And there's a few that I would recommend if you're interested. There's by Ryan Calais Cameron, who is a great writer. He in recent years he's just had always had it's like Retrograde is a play that's been on recently in the West End. But for black boys who have considered suicide, when the hue gets too heavy, is just an incredible play. And it may be one that, floats the boats of your students. I've got Emma Rice's Bluebeard, which is also highly entertaining, good group pieces. Tim Crouch, Toto Kablamo, brilliant stuff. I mean, Tim Crouch is an absolute hero. I got a play called For a Palestinian by Bilal Hasna. Beautiful, beautiful play of kind of like shared histories. And recently I saw Claire Dowie perform Adult Child, Dead Child. Blew my mind. And so I've been exploring her plays. There's one that I've been reading called um, See Primark and Die, and H to HE, I'm turning into a man. So exploring new places is always an exciting thing to do, isn't it? But so what do you do with your plays? And when you're going through the plays with your students, do you action them? How do you make them accessible? Is there anything any kind of surefire ways of making students like make the plays more approachable? How do you support students with challenges in rehearsal around attendance and engagement and time constraints, especially with working within groups? That the monologues potentially are the most straightforward, but because then they're just reliant on themselves. But how do you approach supporting them, and what do you do with direction and feedback? Do you have methods of supporting them there? Um, um, Hamish, you put we encourage group text based on the cohort, and students choose their monologues after class exploration. Okay, that's great, and it would be so you will like kind of do some table reading of monologues. Do you get them up on their feet? Like how do you explore them? If there's anything that you can add there, that would be great. Um, Bethan, you've said, do we get examiners reports for component two? And if not, is this something we can look at introducing? We don't do that because but we used to do it. It used to be that you'd be able to get a copy of the examiner's record sheet. So unlike with component one, which is moderated, and then the moderator will write a report that is about the whole cohort. Because component two is externally assessed, there is no, as in all external assessments, the examiner does not write an individual report about each student that they see. So it's difficult because you want some further um kind of support, I suppose, with what you're saying and whether or not that can be looked at. Yeah, I think with the example that you've shown there, it can be difficult because you think, oh, well, we're using the same play year after year, and why is it not scoring the same? And you know, we train our examiners, and the majority of them are teachers, practicing teachers who are running the qualification to be as objective as possible. And what we'd expect them to be able to do is not be subjective in terms of going, well, I wouldn't have directed it like that, and therefore there's a misunderstanding of what the meaning is. So we try to ensure that that sense of objectivity around what they're experiencing, what they're seeing, is fair, and that when it comes to the technique, that should be as objective as possible with technique around clarity, around the effective communication, using the body, using the voice, the use of movement in order to express these ideas. I suppose it's interesting when it with in terms of the statement of intention and that how that comes into play and what impact that has, that can really clarify, although it doesn't have any marks, it can really clarify for the examiner what the interpretation is. So, but I will put forward to our assessment team to see if it's possible, if in future series it's possible for the examiners to be able to have the notes that they keep as they're doing the assessment made available. Um, Rianne, you've asked about your students doing well at GCSE and how much a step up for A level. Well, in terms of there just tends to be more of a level of sophistication around the plays that are used within A level, I would suggest. We could see before when we were looking at those that there were some plays that are really accessible at GCSE level. That like the Crucible, for example, that of course it's could be used within A level because it's it's performed by professional adults all the time. It's just that the accessibility of it, I suppose, is stronger for GCSE. Um, the thing about a play like Adult Child, Dead Child is I've just seen a 68-year-old woman perform it, and honestly, it was astoundingly good of how naturalistic it was. And I think that this is, this is one of the things that an A-level student could use that play, and it's just how they are performing it. I've seen lots of student productions, especially at GCSE, where they grasp it, but they're not able to do this. They're not able to have this kind of maturity in their performance. So yes, there are crossovers between plays that can be used at both levels, but the majority of plays are probably just a little bit more mature, sophisticated in terms of what's happening in them and what it requires the performer to be able to do. Um, oh, I'm sorry, Ryan. I think I need to look into that and what I will do. Sorry, I didn't realize that some of them were taking you to GCSE. I will make sure that you get the right ones and then it's got the A level. So in all of those in all of those examples, so in terms of the examiner reports, etc., all of this is available on the website. It's all there. I was trying to make it easy for access, but unfortunately, it looks like I've added some of the GCSE ones. So I'll sort that out and we'll get those sent out to you after the event. Um, okay, so these are some questions around accents, first of all, and around do students have to use accents? And in some respects, they don't. And but it's worth taking into consideration what the playwright's intentions are and how best to interpret the role. So it may not be necessary to do the accent, but there may be other clues and indications that the students understands the context of the character It might be about class, it might be about age, there are lots of things to take into consideration. Um, can students perform directly to the audience? If the play was written to be performed directly to the audience, i.e., the student is making eye contact with the audience, like it's being directed at them in that kind of, there isn't a fourth wall, basically, then of course they can. It's when it isn't, if it's not written to be done that way, and then a student makes a decision to do it, that's where the issues lie, because it's not taken into consideration that this is a it's not taken into consideration what the playwright has wanted it to be. So they didn't write it to be direct address. So if it hasn't been, then don't do it. If you have got if in terms of doing monologues and duologues on one day and a group on the other, so yeah, you can have one session for monos and duos and another session for group performances. If you're recording it, for example, there's no time limit between those, so you could do the monologue duologues on one Monday and then the group on the following Monday. When you're editing, keeping the narrative arc, you don't need to do that. You can edit the text as like a kind of from a longer section. You can edit to the number of students in the group. There's no need to keep that narrative arc as such. Students can use extracts from musicals. We would always recommend using plays wherever possible. It really does depend on the musical and whether or not there's enough spoken dialogue available, and students shouldn't be singing in component two. Ryan, adult child, dead child. Yeah, it was written to be performed by one person, and the it's not. I would suggest within the context of this A level that it wasn't split, because um in terms of you, the that the role, the narrator is playing someone and talking about these different stages of their life, and then going into like being absorbed within that particular moment, and then will become a narrator, and then like kind of like a formal narrator, and then we'll move back into talking to the audience again, and then we'll fall into the character again. So at GCSE, I mean, I'd say it is kind of possible to do it, but within A level, I'd say it's probably best to stick to it as one performer doing this, to do it as a monologue. That's just my opinion, but I think, yeah, I would, to err on the side of caution, I would do that. So yeah, we've got lots of examples on the website of component two. So again, within exemplar material, coursework support, and past training content sections, we've got some stuff from Macbeth, Pink Mist, Arabian Nights, Dogs Barking. We've got design work as well. So have a look at those. I think we've gone through all of the questions, but if there's any more, please say. Um, Component three is in three sections. Section A focusing on the live theatre, and that there is two choices for them, one on performance and one on design. And this is 20 marks. It should take about 45 minutes for students to answer the question. They can take in notes of up to 500 words. And as you know, we're the only exam board to allow that. They can talk about a musical here. It just can't be a sung through musical. So they couldn't use Hamilton, they couldn't use Les Mis, but they could use anything that has spoken word in. I said before about if your students need any support because they can't see um, the live theatre, that to get in touch and we can give permission to use recorded work. The notes, they can cover any of those aspects: performance, director's concept, impact on the audience, can include sketches and diagrams. They just can't include photos. And there's a front sheet to go with the notes that they can attach. Examples of questions here. We've got tons of these on the website. So if you haven't had a chance to look, have a look at those question papers. I'm now hoping that that link that I've put in takes you to the A-level ones. And if it doesn't, I'm really sorry. I will sort it out and send them to you. Here's an indicative mark scheme because within these questions, there are things about what students might refer to and a list of suggestions. But there are other things that they might draw attention to and they might focus on, and the examiner will mark them accordingly. If it's good, then it can be included within the marks. And then there's the level-based mark scheme where it talks about the standard of work that they're doing. For section B, this is the first set text, so students being asked questions on a specific extract from a text that they've explored. They won't know what the extract is in advance, so they find out on the day, and they're being asked questions from the perspective of a performer and a designer. There are 36 marks here, and we suggest about 60 minutes to answer these two questions. Here's some examples of questions that they could be asked. Focusing on maybe the space, maybe the design elements, but there's always going to be framed as a performer, how you would do something, as a designer, how you would do something. And again, indicative mark scheme available. You can see all of these on the website with the level-based mark scheme as well. For the past few years, here's kind of foci. I think that's the right way to say it of what we've been looking at. So, and you can look at this yourself, but you'll see that the type of things that students will be asked about. You can see that some like sound or lighting, or very specifically lighting within the first paper, but then there are some much more general ones about theatrical space or stage space. Here's a couple of questions. So, do students need to cover the extract as a whole in their responses? And is there any guidance around that, around how they do it? So, the expectation is that the response will be sufficient evidence of the understanding of the demands of the extract. The sensible approach would be less of a list and more of but we've got some really good examples on our website for doing this. Georgie, I can see that you've written a question about accidental death. And oh, now that is an interesting point there that you've said about the context that you've provided, and it may be that the student talks that uses some of those. And because what happens around the assessment is that potentially different examiners will assess different sections, so they're not necessarily all assessing the same one. Now, I think for 3 and 4, it would be the same examiner, but probably best to not take anything for granted. That doesn't mean that the student has to kind of repeat everything verbatim, but that they should always be treating the examiner, the reader, as like, well, you don't know what I'm talking about, so I'm going to explain it to you. And there are kind of, yeah, maybe just be wary about going, well, you've said it in question 3, so I won't mention it again, or like I'll just say, and in question 3 I talked about it's I suppose it's just a way of making sure that they don't take anything for granted with what they're writing in question 4 if they've already said stuff in question 3. Jolene, yes, they can write about a theatre production scene in year 12. Obviously, they would need to go over it again to make sure that they're up to scratch. They don't need to mention practitioners in section B. And they can refer to theatrical influences in styles as they wish. In terms of how theatre is developed and performed. We've got lots of stuff in this in the lead examiner reports actually about this. So it's around how ideas would be developed. So if a character has a particular physical affliction that develops in particular key moments within the work, or a sound effect that starts quietly and briefly but developed as the play goes on. So it could be that that's what they're referring to when they're talking about developed and performed. Students can move the location to another time and place. And according to understanding the specific time and place in history. So, with something like accidental death, it is particularly well rooted. So if they are going to move things, they just need to be, they just need to reflect the fact that they understand of it's like it's time and context, because they can't change the language. So if, as long as they're kind of referring to the universalities of the message of the work, then potentially they can do. But again, do they need to in terms of the plays that they're doing within the section B? It may be that you just don't need to. So, but if you need to ask any further questions about this, then please do let me know. Section C is about the production concept that they're doing, and using a chosen practitioner from the 8 that are available, 24 marks available, and 45 minutes to complete. Again, lots of examples on our website that you can have a look at of indicative mark schemes. And in the past 5 years, these are the areas that have been focused on. So you can see that it's quite consistent within question 6. But it's an exam and we have to change it each year, so it's unpredictable. So we do try to make it as open as possible wherever possible. Students cannot use the same practitioner that they've used in component 1. So although let me just whiz through to, oh, I thought I had it. No, I don't. Sorry. I thought I had a list of the 8. So there are 8 that we state for component 3. So if, for instance, they use Brecht in component 3, they could use Stanislavski, who's also on that list in component 1. They just can't use the same practitioner twice. I'm aware of the time, so much to cram in, and we've got to finish in a minute. There was just a couple of things that I wanted to tell you about, and that is around the dates for next year. That the component 3 examination will be on the 21st of May, so it has come forward quite a lot. The other dates are very much in line with how they've been this year, around when things can be done. So the component 2 assessment window is basically the same time. If you don't know, I do newsletters and updates each month that you can access on the website. And if you need to get in touch with me, here are my details. We've got a pretty active Facebook group now. If you want to join that, you can email me at any time. You can also book an appointment to talk to me, 15 minutes one-on-one. I'm sure some of you have taken advantage of that already. So that's it. Look, it's 5 o'clock already. We whizzed through all of that. I hope it's been useful. If there's anything still outstanding that you want to talk about, come along to the event on Thursday. We'll be going through similar with a bit more time, or you can contact me and we'll take it from there. But for now, thank you so much. Lovely to see you all. I hope that you're winding down and looking forward to the summer holidays approaching, not too far off. Thank you all. Take care of yourselves and see you all soon. Bye.